Greetings, hikers, friends, and family. Welcome back to my series of videos on documenting the Appalachian Trail and the preparations needed for it. At this point, we left off on our last video on the decision and going over the pros and cons of the decision to make to go on the Appalachian Trail. And having made that decision in the positive, we are now faced with a few new questions. So we'll proceed on and answer those. Now, of course, the first thing that we have to do is figure out what we are going to need and how we're going to start. So with that, I had to do a little bit of research. Seeing that I had no previous detailed knowledge of the Appalachian Trail, other than just a few obscure references, I had to buy a book. And with that, I will show the How to Hike the Appalachian Trail by Chris Cage. Was one of the first books that I've purchased. This book was a very good detailed on the ins and outs of hiking the Appalachian Trail, but it only answered a couple of questions for my particular case, in that it still kind of left me in the lurch as to where to start. And though I did kind of address that in a generalized sense, I still didn't know where Katahdin or Springer Mountain was. So that kind of makes things a little rougher when you don't even have a map of the area. But one item in the book that he did show was the nice little app by WIkitrail.org, and that is functional for seeing and playing with some items that I didn't before. So I'll show you that here on my computer screen. So here we've started up the wikitrail.org application here, and we can now play around a little bit with some of the stuff that will allow you to get a generalized plan of how your hike would look. So we'll start out with the date, of course. We're going to pick that it starts tomorrow so that the computer doesn't do all kind of funky stuff. And we have an option of starting at Springer Mountain or several other places. So with that, we'll start at Katahdin, and then we will end back up to Springer. So next up, the next option is time needed to get into trail shape. Basically, I'm kind of an old fart recovering from surgery, so I'm giving myself 2 weeks of easy trail time and taking a 0 day, which means no hiking on that day, of once a week. And then also, you have your average speed in miles per hour. Now this you can kind of determine yourself if you have any of the GPSs or pacing watches and things like that. Even some of the phones will do that for you as well. But the average speed that I put in was 2.25 miles per hour. Normally I will do a little more than about 2.5 to 3, but we're going to start out at 2.25 and see what it does for us. And hiking hours per day. How long do I want to maintain that 2.25 for? So an 8-hour day sounds like a pretty good go at it. So that would give me, once I start hiking, 4-hour shift and then take a lunch and then go another 4 hours. So with that as a generalized way to go, we'll hit the go. And the computer chews on it for a few minutes there. And now you can see that we have dates populated in there. And if we zoom in a little bit for the active portion here, we can see that the first place that we'll come to is the Birches shelters, and that we would spend the night at. The next day, our goal would be to obtain Millinocket, Maine, and spend the night there. And then on the 30th, we would go to Rainbow Spring Campsite and spend the night there, and so on and so on and so on. Now we come down and we see that Monson, Maine is a little bit different shaded color, and there's 2 days of it. So the first night would be the hike to Monson, Maine, where we would stay the night, and the second would be spending the second night at Monson, Maine as a 0. Now how can we tell that's a 0? Well, let's check on the day before. If you click on that, you will see on January 5th, 2026, Monson, Maine, we would walk 26.0 miles in 11.6 hours to get to Monson, Maine. Now, of course, this is where the system kind of fudges a little bit on your 8-hour days, because that's an 11-hour day, but that earns you the right to stay a second day doing those 26 miles. So I'm not too fond of that aspect of it, but as it is, now we would take and open up Monson, Maine on January 6th. That's 0.0 hours of hiking. So that is what we call the 0 day. And that's what happens when you get your dates. Now, of course, here comes the fun part. As we can tell on the screen here, that this is just for December and into a little bit of January and the crossover there. But up here in the corner, we can catch all of the different dates that we will be hiking. And for me, the big thing is, when would we actually arrive at Springer Mountain? Well, that would be June 26th of the start. Now, of course, this here is just a springboard for the what ifs. And I know that, unfortunately, Katahdin is the first starting point, Katahdin to the Birches shelter. We would not be able to leave Katahdin on December of. That would actually be a sometime in the April or May, June, more likely May and end of May and 1st of June, before you would actually be able to get into Katahdin and leave. So with that, we'll create a new plan. So for me, I'm going to do the Springer Mountain 2 weeks, once a week, 2.25 and 8 as the settings. And we'll let it chew on it. So of course, our first night there is Hawk Mountain Shelter, which is 8.1 miles off of the trail at the first day. Of course, that's measuring it from Springer Mountain. You still got to get to Springer, so that's another 8 miles up the approach trail. Now, with this, I notice that of concern is my end date. When do I get there? So I would actually get to Katahdin in June 10th, which would definitely be appropriate for the time frame that I'm leaving. And that would be a doable hike. If, of course, I want to go through all these places in the midwinter, which would not be so fun in some of the areas here, getting through some of the Smokies and the others that I've read about. Although winter hiking is a lot of fun, doing it in the snow means more equipment and heavier packs, which is not going to be a capability for me. So let's do a realistic date. What I noticed with a May, let's just go May 1st. With the same defaults. Now, of course, we're leaving at a good springtime area where a lot of the trails might be in a little better shape, especially up on those tough mountains. And we would obtain Katahdin August 13th. Now, I looked at it, and this year they actually closed Katahdin on either the 15th or the 16th. I don't remember. But mid-October is a fairly consistent closing time for Katahdin. So I'm like, well, that doesn't leave me any room for a failure or an extra 0 day or a little bit of time off trail, which I know I'm going to have to do. So with that, I have to come back and move this from May 1st and add myself in about a few weeks and decide on an April 2nd. So an April 2nd departure. And once that's all populated, we have September 14th as our arrival at Katahdin. Now that gives me plenty of time before it closes off. Shouldn't be any snow until maybe these later weeks, around the end of September, and then the closing in mid-October. So I should beat the snowfall and hopefully be in and complete by then. Now, of course, if I take a week off in the mid portion of this, as I intend to possibly do, that will shoot that out to about the 22nd for my actual true date, as I will bump these dates forward a bit for the week, which this calculator does not allow for any kind of thing like that. But at this point, what I can do though is in the download section down here at the bottom, you can download the calendar and even some map data, which are these points here that where you were stopping at, and you can download that into your different formats. The ICS calendars usually go into things like Outlook or other calendar programs in Apple's Internet iOS. And so that did actually come up and populate into my equipment on that fairly well. So all that dumped into my calendar, and now I can open these up like I do here and see. Once I had that information, I was able to transfer it onto a printed product that I placed in my binder here. And I went and filled in the other information, like the areas that I did. And then because when it's printed, it didn't print out the 0-day colors. And as that happens, so I went ahead and marked them in yellow with a highlighter, and I was able to mark out which day was which and where I was at. So with that being done, I now had a fairly good itinerary of my actual hike, but I still lacked a lot of information in which I needed something else to do. So I got the AT guide from AWOL, actual name David AWOL Miller, and he has done a very good job with this book, and it's become a staple in the hiking community for a lot of years here. And why is because when he's put the book together, each page in the book shows an actual line of elevation and also the mileage in the other column. So both northbound and southbound mileages are shown. For that, makes it really easy to start adding up mileage from my itinerary. So I noticed that each day had a certain number of miles, and I would look on that and go to that point in the guide. So you'll see I made little notations. This here's 47 and that's 48. Those are corresponding to the days of my hike. So now I can look and I can say, all right, on day 48, I should be at Chestnut Knob Shelter. And in his book, it gives a page reference number, or if it's got some other things, and also gives details about it. So I know that there's 8 campsites available, tent sites at that shelter, and it's fully enclosed with a door. Pretty nice being able to know that information. Now, on the times when it comes to the trail, going through a town, he will give a map of that actual area there and highly detailed information about all of the amenities, hostels, grocery stores, and things that hikers tend to use the most. Resupply outfits, outfitters, that kind of thing. So you'll be able to look at this information and determine more accurately where to stop. Now, why is that of a big concern to myself? Well, unfortunately, being a diabetic, and I am only a type 2, but that still means that I do have to have medication on certain regular schedules, along with a continuous glucose monitor and some other things that I want to be able to have with me on the trail. Now, I'm not going to take 6 months of that in my pack all at once. That's going to be very difficult and cumbersome to include all that. And my pack weighs enough already that my back's going to be under some stress as it is. And being recovering from back surgery, that's going to make things a little more difficult. So in an upcoming video, I will go over with you how I'm scheduling out my package drops for my meds and how that's going to work out in the long run. But until then, I hope you've learned something interesting from this video, and hopefully are progressing along in your planning for an AT hike. As I record this, I'm just about 90 days out from my start of my hike. So you'll have that to look forward to in April. And with that, I encourage you, get out, do a little bit of hiking, do those little shakedowns on your equipment. Make sure that you can set up your tent and operate your stove and all those fun things that make life a whole lot nicer out on trail, knowing how to do them quickly and efficiently. Because you don't want to be out in a windy, rainy day and trying to set up your tent for the first time. Save that for being at home where you can go in and have a nice cup of coffee or hot chocolate and make your day a whole lot better. And so, with that, I will bid you all good day and hike on.